Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Matilda of Lazy Camel Collective, and I almost quit sewing this week. And it was all because of this shirt. I had a completely different video planned for this week. I was gonna do another thrift flip video where I was gonna turn 3 pieces into 4 new items to add to my spring wardrobe, and 20 minutes into the video, I was working on this piece and completely screwed up, and it absolutely derailed the entire video. It kind of derailed my entire week, if I'm being honest. I was planning on thrift flipping this skirt into some kind of shirt sort of like this. I was essentially going to be self-drafting an entirely new shirt from scratch. And while I'm not really new to sewing or self-drafting, it has been probably 2 or 3 years since I have done a self-drafting project. And apparently I forgot everything that I know. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what self-drafting is, it's basically when you take your own measurements from your own body and use that to make an entirely new piece of clothing. Oftentimes people will use an item from their wardrobe that they already have that fits them well and use that to kind of help them with the shape, and then just kind of add in their measurements to that. Essentially where I went wrong with making this shirt was right at the beginning when I was cutting the fabric. I cut the fabric way too small. I was using the wrong kind of shirt as a template to make the top, and it just completely messed up the entire project. And that's kind of the downside of doing thrift flips, is you're working with a very limited amount of fabric. And so it's really hard if you mess up. You can't just try again and try cutting a whole new piece of fabric because you only have, this much material to work with. So I had to completely pivot the entire project and come up with a new idea, start from scratch, and basically make an entirely new shirt and a whole new design. Unfortunately, I did not film the part of the shirt that I cut wrong. I was honestly just a little bit stressed out and upset and just wasn't in the mood to show off my mistake and talk about it. And it seemed like even after I pivoted designs for this shirt, everything still seemed to go wrong while making this video. I ran out of the right color thread. My straps broke. I cut the wrong size for the cups of the top, and the final top just still does not seem to fit me just quite right. This one single shirt took me 4 days to make, and I still kind of hate the way that it turned out. So just like I had to pivot about a million times while making this shirt, I decided to pivot video plans for this week as well. So instead of doing an entire thrift flip video where I show you all of the pieces that I'm making for the spring, I decided to make this video just about this one piece and everything that went wrong, how I fixed it, what I'm going to do differently next time, and just walk you through the process of how I self-drafted this shirt and all of the mistakes that I made and all the things that I learned from those mistakes. Hopefully this shows you that sewing is definitely a challenge, and it definitely makes you want to rip all of your hair out, but that it can be a learning experience and an opportunity to grow and learn some new skills. And also just that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to screw up. We all do it. It happens to the best of us. I've been sewing for 5 years now, and I'm still learning every single day, especially when it comes to self-drafting. I'm really excited to share this journey with you. I hope that you learn something from it and that it helps you with your sewing journey as well. So let's get to it. Okay, so we are starting out strong here. Innocent little Matilda doesn't know what's in for her. So I just started out by cutting off the waistband of the skirt. I basically just wanted this skirt for the fabric, so cutting off the waistband allowed me to open this up into one single piece of fabric that we could work with. And then I just took it over to my iron and gave it a quick press just to get all the wrinkles out and make sure that everything would lay nice and flat before we started cutting. And then I just laid the fabric down on my table again, and I cut up one of the side seams so that I would have just one long rectangle of fabric to work on. This is where things started getting a little hairy. I used this shirt as my template for kind of the shape and the size of the top. You can't really see in the video here, but it's actually like a really stretchy top. So when I was measuring it and using it as my template, I wasn't accounting for the fact that it stretches when I put it over my head to put it on. And so when I went to finally cut it out and I held it up to my body, I was like, oh, this is made for a toddler and not for a normally sized human. Unfortunately, this is the only shot that I got of the part of the shirt that I cut out. I immediately went and had a mental breakdown after this part. So I didn't get any shots of it held up to my body, but trust me, it was way too small on me. So I kind of had a decision to make here. Either I could scrap the project entirely, give up, cut my losses, call it a day, or I could pivot and I could try something new, try to learn from the mistakes that I had already made and try to make the most of it. And kind of spoiler alert, I'm making this video, so you already know which decision that I made. I decided to take a beat, take a day, give myself a moment to recuperate. So I went back to the drawing board, reevaluated how much usable fabric I had left and what exactly I could do with it. I went to our trusty old friend Pinterest and kind of took some inspiration from some photos that I saw on there, and decided to kind of go in this kind of direction. Luckily, the skirt that I had thrifted was pretty long and kind of flowy, so I did have like a fair amount of material left, and I was able to kind of suss out that I would probably have enough fabric to make a shirt kind of like one of these. I definitely learned the hard way from this self-drafting experience that I need to use a non-stretchy top as my template when I am self-drafting. I knew this. I don't know, like I said, it had been a long time since I had done a self-drafting project, and sometimes we just forget things. So that lesson is now sealed into my brain. It's ingrained in there forever, and I definitely will not make that mistake again. So like I said at the beginning of this video, unfortunately, that was not the end of my struggles with making this shirt. So I will continue to walk you through my process, everything that I did, what went wrong, and then at the end of this video, I'm going to go through just all the lessons that I learned, what you can take away from this video, how you can not be like me, and hopefully start out a little bit more successfully on your self-drafting sewing journey. So let's get to it. Okay, so take two. This is just kind of a rough sketch of the design that I'm going with and the pieces I'm going to cut out. I started out by making a template of the top pieces of the shirt. So I'm just tracing around that. This includes seam allowance. So I'm just tracing right along the edges. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these pieces out. And we're going to have 4 of these top pieces because we're going to sew them together and have a lining. So we need 4 of the top pieces total. And then I'm cutting out the front and the back pieces of the shirt. So these are going to attach to those top pieces that we just made and make kind of like the bottom part of the front and back of the shirt. And I'm lining this up with the bottom of what was the original skirt because that already had a finished hem. So that'll just save me a little bit of extra work. And then it is time to cut out the ties. So we're going to need 2 thicker ties for the top part that are going to tie around the neck. And then we're going to need 2 smaller ties that are going to connect to the front part of the shirt. So as you can see, I'm literally using every single last piece of fabric that I can on this skirt. And for the shoulder straps, we're going to be measuring 3-inch thick strap. I actually had to cut 4 shorter pieces and then sew 2 of them together to make 1 longer strap. And then I'm doing the exact same process for the front ties, except the width of the straps are going to be 1.5 inches for this instead of 3 inches. So I'm just cutting a bunch of 1.5 thick straps, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just sew all of those together so that I can just have like one long strap. Next, I'm just continuing the prep work for actually making the straps. So I'm just taking my iron and folding the straps in half to make the tube. And then I'm going to take that back to my sewing machine and just sew one straight stitch all the way along the length of the strap. And make sure when you're doing this process that your straps are folded with the right sides facing each other. So you should be looking at the inside of the strap right now. And then I'm just taking it back to my table and I am cutting off the excess fabric. And then it's going to be time to do the fun part, which is flipping the straps right side out. And then I'm going to do this whole process all over again with the smaller straps. This is another pain point in this project. This is where things kind of went wrong again. The skinny straps are really, really difficult to make. It literally took me, I think, 30 minutes to flip the straps right side out, and they completely fell apart during the process of flipping them right side out. There were huge holes in the seams. They just kind of like ripped apart. So I would recommend, if you're making skinny straps, to originally cut your fabric to be 2 inches wide instead of 1.5. I'd done this before successfully with the 1.5 inch thick strap, but I think that I just was lucky. And so I probably wouldn't do it this exact way again if I was going to do skinny straps. Now that we got the horribleness of strap making out of the way, it is time for a slightly more fun part of the process, which is putting everything together. This is where I maybe started to see a light at the end of the tunnel and have some hope that this was maybe going to go somewhere. So in order to make the top pieces of the shirt, you're going to take one of your top pieces and lay it down on your table face up. So you should see the good part of the fabric. And then you're going to lay one of your thick straps right along the top edge of the shirt, and then take another one of the top pieces and lay it down face down. So you're going to be seeing the bad part of the fabric. So you're basically making a little sandwich. And then we're just pinning everything all together. You're going to leave the bottom part of the piece open. And that'll allow us to flip everything back up. And make sure that you, as you can see here on the screen, make sure that your strap has the long part facing towards you. That's just going to make it all kind of come together correctly when we flip it all around and turn it into a shirt. And obviously we're doing this on both of the top pieces of the shirt. And I'm just taking it back over to my trusty dusty sewing machine and sewing exactly along everywhere that we pinned on both sides. And this is what it is kind of looking like. It's actually kind of starting to look like a shirt, which is very reassuring. And I'm just cutting out the excess material along the seam allowance just so that we get rid of some of the bulkiness in there. Moving right along, I'm just getting ready to attach the bottom pieces to the top. So I'm doing a rolled over hem across the top piece of the back panel. And then for both of the front panels, I'm doing a rolled over hem along the front edges, the edges that are going to be touching each other. And now I'm just attaching the top pieces to the bottom panels for the front of the shirt. So you're going to lay those triangle top pieces face down. So right sides are going to be together for the rectangle shape and the triangle shape, and just kind of pinning all along the bottom edge of that. So you're going to make sure that that long strap is facing towards you while you're pinning. I didn't get a good shot of this, but I'm also attaching those skinny straps to the front panels as well. So I'm kind of sandwiching it in between those two pieces that I'm pinning together. And here I'm just showing you how frayed and messed up my straps ended up being when I flipped them right side out. So I actually ended up cutting a couple smaller pieces of the straps. My original plan was to have the strap kind of go all the way around the entire shirt, so it would be kind of like a cinched waist, but Unfortunately, I just didn't have the right straps. So here I am just attaching everything together, top and bottom pieces. The little pieces of strap are in there as well, and it's just going to be sticking out the front of the shirt, which you'll see in a few moments. And the very last step, finally on this horrible, terrible, awful journey, is to attach the front and back pieces together. So I'm just pinning right along the side seams, and then I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine, sew it all together, and then we're going to take a final look at what this monstrosity looks like. Okay, so I don't completely hate how this shirt turned out. I really love like the halter top. I love the way that this kind of style of shirt looks with this pattern with like the colors and the paisley and everything. I love the open back and like the flowiness of the whole piece. I just think it is just like very cute, very cohesive. I think the part that really bothers me is just the cups, the top part. I think that they're too big, and I think the reason for that is because I had initially planned on having that cinched waist and having the ties go all the way through and just kind of like cinching it together right underneath the bust there. And since I didn't end up being able to put the ties all the way through the shirt, I wasn't able to get that kind of cinched look that I was looking for. And I think that's also probably part of the reason for kind of the gapping that I'm having on the top and on the sides as well. So I think in order to pivot again, I'm going to eventually, probably not today or anytime soon, but I will eventually probably just add a little bit of elastic right along the bottom there, and that will kind of take care of the like bagginess and kind of awkwardness of the top there. But otherwise, I think it's fine. I think it was just kind of an arduous journey that I went through making this shirt, and it just took so dang long to finish. But overall, I'm like fine with how it turned out. I think that really the biggest takeaway from this process was just the lessons that I've learned, and now I know what to do differently. So let's talk about those lessons while we're at it. So if you're chugging along on your sewing journey, you've got a couple of really good projects underneath your belt, you've tried doing a couple thrift flips, maybe you've worked on some projects that you've made using a pattern, and you're feeling really, really good and really confident and ready to take on a self-drafting project of your own. My very first tip would be to go in with a very, very solid plan. I have been mostly doing thrift flips for the past 2 or 3 years when I'm doing any kind of sewing project. And generally, if you've seen my videos in the past, I go in with kind of a loose, rough kind of vibe, idea, plan. I don't really know what I'm gonna be making until I'm like in there and doing it. And that really doesn't work when you're self-drafting your own clothes. So if you're planning on doing a self-drafting shirt, if you want to make something like this as well, or if you're looking at doing any kind of self-drafting project, I would suggest make sure that you have a super solid plan before you get started. Make sure that you have all of your measurements. So if you're making a shirt, make sure that you have your arm measurements, make sure you have your bust measurements, your waist, your shoulders, all the things. There's plenty of resources online that will teach you how to take proper measurements of your body before you get started with a sewing project. The second thing that you should make sure that you have before you get started is just a general sketch of what exactly you're going to be making. So just grab a scrap piece of paper and just draw out a loose idea of like what you want your final project to look like. This helps if you have some reference photos from other clothes that you are inspired by from Pinterest or other clothing websites. That just helps kind of give you a final idea of what you're going for and the vibe that you're looking for. And then the third thing that you need to have is a sketch of all of the individual pieces that you're going to be cutting out with your fabric and the measurements of all of those exact pieces based off of the measurements that you took of your own body. You could even like take a scrap piece of paper and cut out your own kind of patterns using your measurements, and that way you have something to trace. I would definitely recommend doing that if you're kind of new to self-drafting. That way you can just kind of like use that paper as your first draft and make sure that you like the way that things are fitting, the way things are laying, and then you can transfer that onto your fabric. That is like a whole extra step, and it does take a little bit of extra work. When I pivoted the second time on this project, or pivoted the first time, I don't know, I lost track. And I actually like drafted out a pattern of that top piece of the shirt. That just really helped me kind of visualize how it was going to lay, where it was going to go, how it was going to fit. I also like made, I think, 2 versions of that cup too. So it just gives you a little bit more wiggle room and a little bit more space if you accidentally mess up. You're at least messing up on a piece of paper instead of on your very limited amount of fabric that you have that you also like spent money on. Okay, advice number 2 for self-drafting is make sure that your piece can fit over the widest part of your body. So if you're making a skirt, make sure that it can fit over the widest part of your hips. If you're making a shirt, make sure that it can fit over your shoulders and over your bust. I know this seems like common sense, and maybe it is. I mean, it definitely is common sense, but I think that's just something that's so easy to forget about when you're self-drafting, because you just think, especially when you're starting out, you're not used to like, in your brain's not really used to like thinking in this kind of way. It's just so easy to just think, okay, well, if my bust is 36 inches and I know my waist is 28 inches, then, all that I have to worry about is making sure my material fits those exact measurements. When, you have to make sure that it's going to be able to fit over your shoulders. You're going to have to be able to make sure you can actually put it on. So this is where your measurements from advice number 1 come into play, is just make sure you know what the widest part of your body is, where exactly it needs to fit, and make sure that every single part of the piece will be able to fit over the widest part of your body. If you don't want to have a super flowy, kind of oversized looking shirt, then you need to think about, how can I adjust this piece so that I can expand and then contract to fit over my body? So what do I mean by that? For example, you could have an open style shirt like this one that has ties on the front so that you can open it and then tie it shut. Crazy. Or maybe you don't want to have kind of like a tie situation, then where can you add elastic so that you can have that extra amount of fabric, but then cinch it in at the waist or at the bust or wherever to kind of give it a more cinched, flowy look, but then allowing it to be able to expand a little bit extra so that you can fit it over your head and over your shoulders. Same thing goes if you're making a skirt or a pair of pants, right? So if you're making a skirt, then how can you add elastic to the waistband? Or maybe if you're a little bit more advanced, you can add buttons or a zipper, but just making sure that the piece can fit over the widest part of your body. Okay, and advice number 3 is, if you are using another piece of clothing that you already own as a template for the piece that you are self-drafting, make sure that it has the same type of material as the material you're working with. For me, the biggest mistake that I made during this project is the item that I was using as my template to make this shirt was a really, really stretchy material. And the fabric that I was working with for the thrift flip has no stretch to it at all. I mean, it's like, there's nothing. It's not giving me anything. And so when I would put on that original piece of clothing, it had that stretch and it was able to fit over the widest part of my body. This material is not stretchy. And so if I were to try and put it on, it would not stretch to fit over the widest part of my body. So again, this is something that probably seems really obvious to people who have been sewing for quite a while, but as somebody who maybe is new to self-drafting, or somebody who has never done this before, or if you're like me and you've done it before but you forgot, hopefully this is just a helpful little tidbit so that you don't make the same mistakes that I did. So anyways, that is all that I have for you today. I hope that this video was enlightening. I hope you learned something. Maybe you were able to laugh a little bit at my misfortune. I know now that this is all over, I'm definitely laughing at myself a little bit, but I think this was just a really great learning experience, a great growth opportunity. I just think it's really rewarding when you go into a project and you don't really anticipate all of the challenges that you're going to face. And then, things start going wrong and you're able to just overcome them anyways. I just think that there's something very rewarding in that, and being able to kind of take a step back and say, okay, well, that was a really hard experience, but I learned a lot from it and I made it through in one piece. And now I have a cool shirt out of it. So, yeah, I hope this doesn't deter you from making your own clothes or self drafting your own clothes. I hope it does the opposite. I hope it encourages you to give it a try, give it a stab, and just embrace the challenge and embrace the journey. I think I believe in you. I know you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Let me know in the comments what you think of the video. If any more experienced sewers out there have any tips for anybody who's new to self-drafting, let me know in the comments and share with the world. I would love to read them. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. That truly means the world to me. I'm so grateful to be here and to share my journey and all my experiences with you. Have a gorgeous day.